It's the 27th. Welcome. Hope everybody's doing good. On this Wednesday of 2021. So we have a poll up for everybody tonight. Should the people who okay nuclear plants in farmland be arrested and jailed for life without parole for the murder of all the people who ate the food from those farms? I'd like to see a similar law enacted for people who allowed these plumes to happen. It covered the entire planet in radioactive fallout for millions of years. The whole ecosystem pulsing energy every second. Gee, how bad could that be, I wonder? Opinion, nuclear power has become irrelevant, like it or not. And that's the big problem the industry got. It's irrelevant. You can't have a real conversation. So it's an orchestrated conversation you're seeing out there. If you've been here before, you'll notice a lot of things about this industry is in auto mode. Net nuclear capacity increase of 0.4 gigawatts in 2020. Renewables was over 260 gigawatts. The equivalent of 300 nuclear power plants came on in 12 months. There's only 412 plants operating worldwide, murdering our planet worldwide. Radioactive cloud, I was asked last night to cover the USS Ronald Reagan. I forgot to put a picture in there. Hang on. Put in USS Ronald Reagan. Oh, that's it there. You know what they say, one picture is better than no picture. U.S. Ronald Reagan was hit by radioactive cloud, hit the U.S. aircraft carrier. Which is kind of weird because that aircraft carrier hits a lot of things, right? How many suicide bombers does it take to equal one of these bad boys again? U.S. Ronald Reagan was as close as 1 mile away from... I'm not laughing. That's gallows laugh. Because when you realize how close 1 mile away of a reactor on the ocean actually is, that's bad. Snow falling on Navy ship was actually radiation caused by Fukushima radioactive steam. That's being pretty polite. If you can taste radiation, you're in a lot of trouble. Again, that's the gallows laugh, right? Just terrifying. I wouldn't want to be that person. People were defecating on themselves in the hallways from excruciating diarrhea. That's a bad sign, trust me. We saw radiation 300 times safe levels, and they're just using a Geiger counter, a gamma counter. So not counting the actual beta or neutrons or alphas. Multiply it by minis. So, like, if just a single person on the U.S. Ronald Reagan was able to taste it, yet alone have hallways full of people defecating on themselves because the bathrooms were backed up. Navy sailors use no mask when scrubbing radioactive particles from this carbon-free nuclear off the USS Ronald Reagan. Our digital watches stopped working. We were laughing at first, and then somebody said, oh crap, we're goners. Crew members lost control of their bowels after Fukushima radiation exposure. A kilometer off the coastline is not exposure, it's hell. That shouldn't be there. They're missing, by the way. We've done research expeditions this year that showed the spiders are missing. And there's a story came out yesterday about spiders missing in Oregon. And we talked to a researcher from Nova Scotia, told us the same thing this year. They're blaming it on climate change, right? Honey, how come you didn't pick up the milk at the shop? It's climate change. Oh, of course. I should have realized. Footage of alarms going off during radiation scans. Footage. They were taking footage. It's crazy. We're dying and we're taking videos of it. To fight climate change seriously, nuclear power must be on the table. So the COPs 26 is starting off. So never underestimate the power of influential, stupid people in large groups like COPs 26. Crystal River. This story here to fight climate change. Crystal River. Now, when you look at that picture, and you just separate that picture, what you're seeing in the background, including the bridge going over the water there, all of it's extremely distorted on purpose. That's the original picture, and I took that picture from it, right? But if you look up pictures of Crystal River nuclear power plant, it shows farms right up to the water towers, the radioactive water towers. And in the background, what do you see? Is that farms? Tell me that's not farms. So the poll tonight, Dana, when you're ready, please. Oh yeah, I gotta do that. Should the people who okay nuclear plants in farmlands be arrested, jailed for life with no possibility of parole? Is that a stupid idea? Should the people who okay nuclear plants in farmlands be arrested and jailed for life without parole? I got 17 votes, 100% says yeah. I meant to put another option C there. So yes, no, and C would have been a should they get the death penalty. So if you think they get the death penalty, and you're watching this later, give me a thumbs up on the video. And I'll know. I'll know, baby. Me and you. So they show you a distorted... We're seeing that happen a lot, aren't we? They show it in the newspapers. They show you this distorted background. But if you go look up pictures of Crystal River, this is what you're going to find. Farmland. Lots of it, too. And that picture. That's disturbing. Get in your car, stop in front of Crystal River, get out with your camera and take a picture. And they'll descend on you like vultures. Go out there in the farmer's field and farm the land. You can take your camera out all you want. Crazies. Climate change. This is radioactive fallout from Fukushima. Pulsing energy every second. It's heating up the planet. I don't know what else to call it. I'd like to find out what that climate change is, though. I'll tell you what. Climate. The fight against climate change. Jonah Goldberg. Hey. This is another radioactive fallout model from Japan covering the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. The model stops, but the radiation didn't, by the way. And you guessed it, North America and Europe and everything else. Invisible cloud, pulse and energy every second. I'd like to come up with a good name for it. Somebody already jumped on and got climate change. That would have been the best one. Now see, this feller, when he looks in the mirror, that's what he's looking at, see? Yeah, you hear me? Hey, you little demon. This is a radioactive xenon 133. There was 450,000 times more than normal in Washington. Persisted for weeks, pulsing energy every second. For millions of years. Landing on the ground and hanging above the ground. It's like a little nuclear engine because it's pulsing energy at the speed of light. It might pulse at 50 feet. Now, if you do anything else on the planet, where you can pulse energy for 50 feet, you're going to move. So imagine you're an atom. You're like a dust particle. You know, you ever see dust floating around in your living room when the sun is coming through and you see all this dust particles? They're so light, right, that they have neutral buoyancy. But imagine if you gave them a little engine and they pulse it at the speed of light, meaning they can propel themselves. And they could do this for millions of years, by the way. That's nuclear fallout, and that's what we're talking about when you see these massive plumes. They're only based on venting. They're not based on, from a single reactor, they're not based on the detonations, the meltdowns. Climate change should be moral equivalent of war. Indeed. This is the Neptunium radioactive fallout, based on TEPCO's models covering the entire planet in radiation in just a short period of time, by the way, just a couple of weeks. And it persists till today, still hemorrhaging. There's former NASA climatologist James Hansen. I can't believe you would invoke James Hansen. That's uncalled for. I declare war on you, Goldberg. Hansen won the equivalent of the Nobel Prize in Taiwan. Over $1 million, right? For promoting nuclear. During the referendum in Taiwan. The whole story is just twisted. This is... after 468 hours, the radioactive plume, that's the Atlantic, that's the Pacific Ocean, that's Alaska, Canada, United States, all the way down the entire planet. Iceland, Greenland, Europe, Russia, France, Belgium, Spain, United Kingdom. Hammered in continuous plumes of radiation, pulsing energy every second. Heating up the ocean, heating up the planet. But we can't call it climate change because they already got that tied into the carbon, is it? You know, the stuff that plants need to grow. A feasibility report prepared by Bruce Power at Westinghouse has found a feasibility report by a company. Reduce carbon emissions. That's what all Halloween. Next Halloween, children will only be allowed to go out dressed like they're going to reduce carbon emissions because United Nations is almost taking over the planet now. Fukushima radioactive fallout, by the way, I put there it's global warming because, but then I found out global warming was already snatched by the controlled oppositions. And I don't know if I'm allowed to use it. I never asked for permission. Do I need permission to say global warming, or is that just the kooky, crazy pro-nuclear industry? Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. That's a great idea. We should do that. Start up a Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. Yeah, I know what you're saying. They got one, but that's not a real one. They're actually lunatics. They could be the offspring of a mutated Rod Adams, you know. Fukushima radioactive fallout covering the entire planet, pulsing energy every second. Nah, it can't be global warming. It's not carbon free. That look carbon free to you? So that accident, call it what you want, that event, it's the same thing as getting hit by a meteorite, except it takes a bit longer to really appreciate what happened. Species are just being annihilated everywhere. Emaciated birds, emaciated whales, emaciated seals, emaciated bears. They're loaded up with so much radiation they can't absorb any nutrients or nutrition. They have leukemia. Carbon-free energy. That'd be wicked. It ain't nuclear, though, I can assure you that. Here's the plume cover in the Pacific from France. Bless your heart, France. It's one of my favorite models, by the way, even though I despise France with a passion. The Atlantic and the Pacific. Here, I put it on the big shot screen for everybody. Look at that bad boy. Terrorists are out there jealous everywhere worldwide. Our dirty bombs won't do that. The nuclear industry is terrorist. They meet all the definitions of terrorism. If you were to make a wanted poster, it would say nuclear industry on it. That's forever, by the way. It's still coming out. It's a continuous plume. It's not like a plume that's moving them along. No. And this is global warming gone. Zoom. Global warming on LSD, probably. Net zero Canada. That's where they get rid of all of us and all the species. Global warming. I can do it with one eye. Look, global warming. See that? I'm really talented. Small modular reactors. 75 years, you still ain't got one. And by the time you actually gets one up, develops it, gets the kinks out of it, gets the new one up to see if it works, and gets the kinks out of that, starts producing them, renewables will have beaten your asses bad, boy. The nuclear industry is impoverishing countries' addicts. They're so lost and so helpless and so feeling so entitled. There is no small modular reactors. There's all kinds of great technology, but there's no small reactors. And so why are they? Because they don't want a solution. Is why they don't seize upon properly. Like if you took 1,000 universities, put them to work on a problem, you could be sure they're going to solve it, right? So if we had a meteorite coming at our planet, all the universities get together in a hurry and come up with a solution. All the kids be like, brainstorm. And Bruce Power is not committed to anything only wrecking you and your future and all the species on the planet. To decarbonizing our economy. Like whoever wrote this stuff, your parents should be arrested for not getting rid of you. And helping Canada achieve net zero emissions by 2050, says Heather Dipstick. They're like, what they're framing a narrative so only nuclear, or that nuclear is the savior to everything. Give us our nuclear and we'll release you from the pandemic, we'll release you from the staggering gas, fuel, oil prices. Just give us our nuclear, because it's getting too late. They're gone in the panic mode is what it is. That's what COPS 2050 is panic mode. Are you going to see it coming out over the next few, because November the 10th, as we get closer to November the 10th, the crazies will start showing up. Bruce Power is committed to decarbonizing our economy. We don't need Bruce Power. It's not your job. You're a corporation. Shut your pie hole. Nobody asked you anything. Nuclear can't do it, so piss off. Clean energy. Like, the article is pure propaganda and brainwashing. Revolting, despicable groveling to the nuclear industry, basically. Oh, here's a pretty new plume model from TEPCO of the plutonium-239. It only got a 24,000-year half-life. There's 10 half-lives, by the way. Plutonium plume, cesium plumes, iodine-129 plumes, iodine-131 plumes. You got neptunium plumes. You got xenon-133 plumes. All these different plumes. They tell the story. Pulsing energy every second, heating up the planet. And nuclear energy is a clean, reliable source of bullshit power, baseload power. Well, you can do baseload with pumped hydro. So all you're going to do is pump water up a hill with your excess energy. And when the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining, I got tons of energy stored. And you can do it in a loop too, by the way. Or you can also use at the same time also. And it's been done to $54 million operation. That's not a small operation. So they're just pumping air, low pressure, 120 psi down into a tunnel. And if you want to, you can, when the compressed air is coming back up, you can have a little bit of heat there, like a fire, and that'll make it expand like crazy, give it major torque. You don't need it, but it'll give you all the torque, consistent torque, base load power. So if you used compressed air and pumped hydro, like, wow! And you can do compressed air anywhere, and it's low pressure, right? See, nuclear is irrelevant, see? If you just try. This is such a sad story. Westminster Bill boasts prospects of nuclear power projects in Wales. What's odd about that picture? What is odd about that picture? What is odd about that picture? Do you see anything weird? Now, first off, the picture is a future nuclear power plant. Great big future one. And it's surrounded by roads. Surrounded by farms. Yummy. And they're going to feed that to your kids until they die, or they can't function, period. And you got to burn your checks to take care of your child. And then they're going to irradiate your child, and you're going to have to pay for all of it. That's the nuclear industry summed up right there, look. As far as you can see, farms. The last thing you want to see is nuclear anything surrounded by farms. And that's not an accident at all. Like if you watched my video last night, the very first part of it, you have Sellafield hemorrhaging 8 million liters a day into the ocean every day for a mixed oxide fuel. I get that coming up, I think. UK government is to introduce a new finance mode. You pay for it now, and we'll build it, and then we won't charge you as much on the energy, which is a lie, you know that. Look at this twisted, sick, and demented. Whoever, the engineers that said, let's do this, let's put them in jail. No parole forever, as a deterrent from other scumbags to do the same thing. So we got a vote going on here. People, should the people who okayed nuke plants should they or shouldn't they? Should the people who okayed nuclear plants in farmland be arrested or jailed for life without parole? Well, yeah, because the radiation goes into the food. They're always hemorrhaging radiation from the fuel pools. The fuel pools, everything in it is reactor cores. and they're still splitting the atoms. So instead of powering 1 million homes every day, that energy is released continuously for decades in these pools. They boil off. And those isotopes, the farmer's supposed to be in the background, my apologies. The isotopes lands in the farms, right? There's a lot of it, though. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And this is how they can keep the numbers down around nuclear power plants, is you put them in communities or preferably surrounded by farms and ocean on the outside for water, but also so they can dump all their nuclear waste directly into the ocean through a pipe they all have. This is a genocide machine. This is a death cult. This is not carbon-free or clean or green or anything else. This is a secret society and a death cult. You're not going to do that with a coal plant. You're not going to do that with an oil plant. You're not going to do that with a gas plant, because the emissions is going to happen to food, right? You really think nuclear is not different? And nuclear is different in the context of it's deadly. Just a tiny bit in your body and you start getting sick for the rest of your life. And it just gets worse. You compromise your immune system from lack of red blood cells. Reviving nuclear power station projects, such as Wi-Fi B on Aegilis. I'm not going to pronounce the word. It probably don't sound any worse than them, but I'm not going to try. Is at the heart of the UK government's ambition, government, a group of people, a terrorist organization's ambition to attain net zero carbon emissions. What the hell are you talking about? There's always hemorrhaging radiations out of these facilities. This is why you bring in 1,000 workers when you're changing the fuel, because there's a huge dump comes out. What a coward industry, though, right? Their future nuclear power plant in the United Kingdom, again, right in the middle of a farm community. Net zero strategy. Oh yeah, net zero strategy where you poison everybody around the world also. Nuclear power plants was abandoned by Japan's Hitachi in 2019. Yeah, because you guys are crazy, that's why. Oh. Hi, it's Dana. Oh yeah, you calling in to get on the show? Okay, I'm going to stick you on. Looks like I turned you down a bit. Go ahead. You're going to be live.
I'll tell you, Dana. I'll tell you something. You live long enough, you see it all.
Yeah.
When you were showing those modular reactors.
Right.
Well, what they don't tell you about is they tried that scheme back in the early 50s. It was called the San Fernando Project.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, it was called they tried that stunt before called modular reactors.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
It was called the San Fernando Project. It was tested in the San Fernando Valley. And the big come on was atoms for peace, that you'd be able to have all the electricity you wanted for $1 a month. And I mean, they had this big come on. They put one in action, and it almost destroyed. It failed in less than a year, and it nearly radiated the entire San Fernando Valley. And the Atomic Energy Commission was so embarrassed by it that they destroyed all the files involved with the San Fernando project.
Wow.
So no one would know about it. And then in some warehouse, because my grandmother used to talk about this all the time, and we thought she was kind of crazy. She said that people got diabetes and all sorts of illnesses because of that experiment.
That's right. Yeah.
Because they had this big real estate company called Heritage Real Estate promoted houses, houses they built in the San Fernando Valley. And
right.
one of the compounds was in conjunction with the Atomic Energy Commission, was that they were testing this modular reactor to give everybody free electricity. You get free electricity, you bought a house near the reactor.
Yeah, it was a human experiment. Yeah, human trials. They got such a long legacy of that. Go ahead. You got anything else you want to throw out there? That's crazy.
Well, you look at the legacy of the nuclear energy people. You swear these people are suicidal.
Right.
I mean, they want to kill themselves and take us with them.
No, they are. They are crazy.
Yeah.
There's no maybes.
And you look at the legacy. You got Hanford, and what they don't tell you when they build these reactors is they're basically building a war machine.
100%, yeah. And some of these reactors you couldn't even decommission them. That wasn't even built into it. They said we'll worry about that when the time comes, right? And that was a fatal flaw for this planet, them doing that.
Oh, definitely. But see, initially when Hanford was built up in Washington State, it was built to create the atomic bombs to end World War II. And then the military-industrial complex says, "Oh boy, we can make a lot of money with this. And we don't. And the only way they'll ever be tested is have a nuclear war or do nuclear testing, which is basically equivalent to a nuclear war."
They don't have auditors per se, right? They just self-audited, the military is. And so when they blew up a 911, for one of the first strikes was the accountant's office at the Pentagon on September 11, 2001. That was one of the first strikes, was kill all the accountants.
Oh, yeah. And destroy all the...
and then Building 6, Building 6 in New York at the World Trade Center complex, that was where they kept all the records. So what you were saying earlier, you see that pattern all the time, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. And they don't tell the public that the creation that they built, their purpose for nuclear reactors is basically to have a plentiful supply of plutonium to build bombs.
They killed the planet for it. They were crazy, eh? They wanted to nuke China. We were covering about 6 months ago. That was a crazy read. And there's a lot of generals and admirals were pushing the Pentagon mad for about a year straight to go nuke China. Let's go nuke them. And they were game on, yeah.
That's what Douglas MacArthur wanted to do during the Korean War.
Yeah, they were actually writing country and western songs promote going over and nuking North Korea and everybody else.
Yeah, over and nuke. Well, it was discovered the reason Truman fired him was he went...
I dropped the phone there. I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's not talked about too much in the history books. Is he went across the Yalu River 10 miles into China during the Korean War.
Yeah,
and,
crazy.
The history books kind of omit that.
Yeah, that's right.
Little error,
Yeah, they still they control the distribution of information, right?
What?
So they control the distribution of information. That's a pretty powerful weapon if you use it.
Oh yeah.
Because you can manipulate the narrative.
Well, when you control the licensing requirements for stations, they have Federal Communications Commission.
Oh, they got a wrap on it. Yeah, they got a wrap on it now. Nobody can break into it. They're never going to let anybody break into it. They got control of it. They're going to...
Oh, yeah, definitely.
They got a death grip on that now. You'll never get it out of their hands. Okay, I got a lot to cover. Was there anything else you want to throw out there?
No, that was about it. I figured, nobody
that was great,
talks
yeah.
about the fact. Nobody talks about the fact, except yourself there and maybe Kevin Blanche, that nuclear power plants were designed as war machines.
They are, that's a better way to look at it. They are war machines.
Yeah.
They're a war on all species on top of that, constantly, right?
Right.
And
the
put
fact
it in the
is,
farmlands? My God.
oh yeah, and heat the water up 40 to 60. When the water is discharged from the reactor, it's 40 to 60 degrees warmer.
Oh, and
than
stuff
it was
back into the rivers, heats up the rivers, yeah.
Oh yeah.
They're lunatics. Very, very
Yeah,
self-centered, eh? They got a
but
very egotistic, self-centered way about them, and they have this they have no moral compass. That seems to be one of the criteria. Is you got no. There's nothing they won't do for their dollar, for a lousy paycheck. Yeah.
Well, the concept of the nuclear power industry is the ends justify the means.
Yeah, it never ends, though, right?
That's their whole mantra: the ends justify the means.
If not, next year's budget will.
Oh, that's right.
As long as you spend the budget, it doesn't matter how crazy you are. As long as you spend it, you'll get the same amount of money or more next year, right? That's one of their mottos, right? Is let's spend as much as we can, and let's wreak havoc on the planet.
And the commanders want more weapons so they can figure out how to blow people up. But more efficient ways of killing people.
Yeah, to get kids.
Military commanders want.
Yeah, they're like you say. They're completely out of control. They've lost their. They're not defending the country, they're destroying the countries from the inside. And how do you stop that, right? How do you stop that?
They're murdering.
It's not an accident, right? Yeah, it's not an accident.
Oh. No, it's what you call, what they're doing is they're creating what they call planned extinction.
Yeah, no, they got it to a science now. Okay, my friend, go ahead. You're a bit breaking up, but it's okay.
Well, I'll let you get back to your news broadcast there, because you're telling it just like it is.
I'm doing the best I can. I appreciate calls like you, though. That's awesome stuff, my friend. You have a great night, and
all right, get up on yourself, and God bless.
You got my number. You can call in anytime. Okay, you have a good one.
All right, bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. That was a great call. That was a great call. I love stuff like that. Let's keep it rolling. So, should it be a crime to build a design of a nuclear power plant in a farming land? This is United Kingdom's latest plant, and like all their other plants, they're smack in the center of farming communities. By substantially increasing the pool's private investors to include the British pension funds. They're going to take the British pensions, invested in nuclear plants, and you have to bail out that plant with everything you got, or you're going to lose the pensions. Does it get any stupider than that? Does it get any more heartless than that, to do something like that with the pensions? To invest it in something so demonic as a nuclear power plant. If something goes wrong with the nuclear power plant, bye-bye pension. Like, this is insanity. That's the definition of insanity, that sentence right there. This is madness enough. Like, that's the future nuclear power plant. They're going to build it. They ordered a lot of material in great big farmland country. I don't know, right? Maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I don't like getting poisoned. I don't know why I'm so cranky. I don't want to be poisoned. By substantially increasing the pool of private investors to include the British pension fund. Wow. Under the new proposals, consumers will contribute to the cost. Contribute! They're paying for it. And then they're just going to jack the price up till you can't afford it, but you got no other options. In light of rising global gas prices, right? This is artificially inflated on purpose to put nuclear now on a pedestal, to put it on the even. And then COP26, all you need is them countries to agree to nuclear right there. And it's Bye-bye, baby. The gas prices will come right back down. This is what they're up to. They're blackmailing the planet in desperation. This is some real desperate stuff. Russia Pacific Fleet to receive 4 nuclear subs in coming year, says Rear Admiral. 6 more subs, they say. Once upon a nuclear ship. There's between 150 and 160 subs with nuclear reactors. Ran up on beaches in northern Russia, and they can't get the reactors out of them, and they're going to build more. Yay. That's some of the ships there. Does that sound like a good idea to anybody? Look, there's 2 subs to your right ran up on the beaches with reactors in them, they don't know, and then they just run away. Yeah, just run it up on the beach and run. They're going to get us a new one. And all the people in the community, for them, we are rabbits. The Green Brief, Gas, Nuclear, and EU, Taxonomy, saga, Drama Queen. And they're all out there lying. Nobody's out there being honest. It's the strangest thing imaginable. It's like, what the freak? The European Union is moving closer to integrating nuclear power. I'm going to call it carbon-free, too cheap to meter. There's 10 of them, a couple of Frenchmen. And all they got to do is vote, yeah, it's green. Payday, baby! They're not elected either. There's no accountability. There's no incentive not to be a demon. Worst case scenario was abandon Tokyo forever, not just evacuating. How about worst case scenario was abandon New York City forever? Or how about worst case scenario was abandoning Moscow forever? Or worst case scenario was abandoning, pick your city. Tokyo has 36 million in surrounding areas. Japan Times column has the public, possibly worldwide, sickens over time. Then that'll make sense to people, I suppose. By the way, it's not just humans are going to get sick. All the birds and mammals and animals and insects, bacteria in the forest are all going to get wiped out. The phytoplankton are good as gone. And I mean good as gone. In the block Sustainable Finance. Sustainable finance. How is that sustainable? Covering the whole planet in your own country is bad enough, but the whole planet and radioactive fallout? Why? So you can make a few dollars. A set of rules designed to provide investors with a common definition of what is green and what is not in order to channel more capital into sustainable business. Like you don't need a referendum on this. You don't need bring any experts on this conversation. Nuclear is not carbon free. It ain't ever going to be carbon free. And the small modular reactors, you're 75 years later, you still haven't got one, and you're not going to have one for at least 10 to 15 more years. Sounds like a scam to me. By the way, they're going to cost over $3 million each. So it's 3 times more expensive to build the same amount of power as a normal reactor as it is to build 10 of these $3 to $4 billion reactor. If you're lucky, because they have never built one. They're going to build a jet engine into something that can fit in your Vega hatchback. Basically what they're saying with a small modular reactor. These are lunatics. And the reason they're saying that it's going to have the extra energy is because it's going to be using mixed oxide fuel. These are lunatics. There's nobody contained it. The announcement came in a tweet. Twitter. I said yes. Send it out to my followers. The media lackeys. After an EU summit last week where leaders debate the taxonomy in the context of the bloc's wider response to soaring energy prices. Yes, it's only soaring because of the COP26 is coming. Media is going to send the whole planet into a frenzy. You got to get nuclear. This is what they're up to. This is what they believe is going to happen. It never does. But this is their their PR, everybody's in on it, right? They own all the media, so you get the same pictures, the same author, the same paragraphs, and it's going to show up at the same time worldwide. We're almost, the slaughter is almost up on us. After EU summit last week, where leaders debated, leaders. These are appointed lackeys. These are not leaders. You wouldn't let them push your child's toboggan down a hill, let alone anything else. Fukushima radioactive fallout is global warming. This is a Neptunian model from TEPCO. So obviously you want to multiply it by several million to get a true number. Over concern that nuclear power was not explicitly included as a green energy source. Because it's not, moron. First off, all nuclear power plants need 2 gas, oil, or coal plants to run. They can't run on their own power. And you can't call it carbon free when it needs 2 power plants dedicated to the massive nuclear infrastructure site. EU exclusives has so far held up its proposal on gas and nuclear, suggesting the issue is too politically charged to be decided by experts. And who did he call an expert? Somebody who knows nothing about nuclear, but he gets him in front of a camera and he says,
there are multiple reasons, I think, why there's opposition to nuclear power plants. Nuclear energy is harder for people to understand, the idea of radiation. I mean, radiation is natural. The Earth is bombarded by radiation all the time. So the radiation that was released, for example, in 3 Mile Island, that exposed the accident at 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania, exposed residents nearby to radiation, which is equivalent to the amount of radiation that you get by flying in a commercial aircraft across the continent and back. Airplane. So it's not really that dangerous, but...
Ooh, you can't say that. That's illegal to say that. He said, like, flying across the country on an airplane and back. For people that were sucking in radioactive particles that stuck inside their bodies for life. Reports of enormous increase in cancer deaths, infant mortality rates doubled, birds disappeared, mutations were absorbed after 3 Mile Island. Pet deaths after radiation exposure supported by top universities, reanalysts of the 3 Mile Island data. And an insider in charge of monitoring radiation at 3 Mile Island said radioactive releases was up to thousands of times higher than the degenerate lackeys that the government submitted. And they wouldn't let them evacuate because it would have been a black eye for nuclear. As it turned out, that was the end of the nuclear renaissance, was 3 Mile Island. It should have been Santa Susana, which happened in 1959. It's still going on with a sodium reactor. Back to square one then, no? For the European Commission in-house scientific booty, I call them booty instead of body, the Joint Research Centre issued, I hate their guts with a passion, by the way, issued a long-awaited report in July. Long-awaited. It concluded that the nuclear posers was safe and therefore eligible for a green label. A finding that 2 other lapdogs later confirmed. So, I'll show you how this works now. Testing of evaporators began at 3 Mile Island. This is after everybody stopped watching. They had all this radioactive water and many sieverts per liter. They call it tritium, right? Ernie Gunderson and Lake Barrett. So 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant workers prepared Wednesday to begin testing equipment used to boil 2.3 million gallons, 6 million sieverts of water contaminated in the nation's worst commercial nuclear reactor. Nice, you see how they framed it? Commercial. Less than the amount of the radiation received from a year's watching color television. The release's effects on the average person within 50 miles of 3 Mile Island will be like watching colored television for an extra year. That's the equivalent of coming up and spitting in your face and then throwing you off a building. Ultimately, it's the same result, right? They killed you. Then the energy crisis hit with the climate emergency. And again, we're seeing this narrative of the energy crisis. With the climate emergency coming on top. Climate emergency, energy emergency, climate emergency. And so they're like, poke you in the eyes if you look anywhere else, right? But what they forgot was the goose with the golden egg called Fukushima. Radiating the entire planet, killing all the species. Carbon doesn't do that. Gas, oil, and coal doesn't cover the entire planet in a plume, continuous plume, pulse, and energy at the speed of light every second, forever and ever. Long past the human experience, that's for sure. Long past your time frame. This will be going strong for 1 million years. And even though gas and nuclear cannot be considered green, as such, to certainly provide a low-carbon alternative to coal, buddy. Whoever wrote that should be ashamed of themselves. They're pretty sneaky, eh? Grammar is a very sneaky thing. They certainly provide a low-carbon alternative. Oh. You know what I forgot to do? That hates me. I forgot to go in, open up. This is the video we're watching right now. And scroll down, click show more, scroll down, blah, blah, blah. And click on allow embedding. Because as soon as the video goes live, that I have that checked normally, always. And then they uncheck it the minute that I go live. So if somebody's trying to embed the video while I'm streaming, for instance, it doesn't work. I have to do it 3 times. When I originally start the video, I save it, the preamble for these live shows. Then immediately got to go back down and check the box again because it's going to be unchecked. And then when I go live, when I click live and start playing the music, hey everybody, it's blah, 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 19, you guessed it. Yeah, and lower carbon alternatives to coal. Well, first off, most nuclear power plants use coal plants. They use 2 of them, or oil or gas, because they can't run on their own electricity, see? So when they call nuclear carbon-free, there's not a single thing about nuclear that's carbon-free. They use the most carbon-intensive material. Everything is top of the top. Everything is inspected 3 times, and triplets on top of that. They're a death cult, a very dangerous cult in the secret society. Climate change, which is the same, I suppose, right? But because a lot of people associate with cult as if they're blind followers, which is what we're seeing, right? Anyway, so climate change. Oh, you mean Fukushima radioactive fallout? What are you talking about? Well, it's covering the whole planet in a continuous plume, pulsing energy every second at the speed of light forever and ever and ever. You know, climate change, right? The meeting was held by Bulgaria, Cyprus, Czechia. They got a lot of good shady characters there. Malta, Poland, Hungary, Greece, France. Whoa, ew! What are you doing with France in that list? Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia. You can get your picture taken with any of the presidents or prime ministers of those countries for $10. It's true, I'm not kidding you. Look at me, I don't kid, you know that. I swear. Swear on the life of the French president. Dana, do you swear on the life of the French president? I certainly do. You have no idea. I do so. What a great idea. Ooh, what we got next? Hang on, wait for it. So that's global warming, yeah? Do you get it? That's radioactive fallout based on venting, not based on the actual meltdowns. You know, meltdowns. They're meltdowns. They don't exist. Despite the fact that they're trying to convince you they do, they don't. Indian Point, yeah, just imagine, Indian Point. Indian Point is going to test their sirens for former nuclear power plant. We still got fuel on site, you got to have sirens. Indian Point Energy Center, that's a pretty name for it. It should be Indian Point Nuclear Power Plant. It's still a nuclear power plant until it doesn't exist anymore. We'll test its emergency sirens between 10:30 and 11 a.m. today. Give them lots of warning, did you? In Westchester, Rockland, Orange, and Putnam counties. The former power plants, the former prime minister, the former president, the former power plants, sirens will sound at full volume, all 100 of them, for about 100 minutes. Just sit, no action for the public is necessary. Do you really think they're just going to be sitting there picking their nose? They're going to have their fingers in their ears. Every dog there, every child there will be crying for at least 3 days straight. It was activists who got it put there, and now they're going to torture you with it, make you hate it till you don't want it no more. See? How nuclear kills fish. Oh, that's a story about Indian Point. Have you seen that one? Here's all the different ways that a single nuclear power plant kills fish. Just a single reactor. Each reactor at the site does the same thing. Analysts in the two states of New York and New Jersey found that fish fatalities killed more than 17 billion fish each year in New York. These are big fish, 17 billion, and another 9 billion in New Jersey. And the cooling system also vacuums up trillions of newly hatched fish and destroys them in the heat exchangers. And a decline in the fish stocks along the entire northeast Atlantic seaboard is due to the destruction of baby fish, more to the destruction of baby fish than the overfishing of adults by the commercial fleets. Now, that doesn't end there, though. The Indian Point plant on the Hudson River sucks in 2.5 billion gallons of water every day and kills about 2 billion juvenile and mature fish in its screens and its thermal plume. You think it ends there? Guess again. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission estimated more than 300 billion baby fish are killed each year, and they're sucked into the 40-foot wide intake pipes. It's a genocide machine, and it's boiling 1 million gallons a minute. So there's 16 glasses of water per million gallons, 4,500 tons. Times 1 billion creatures every minute and 440 nuclear power plants on the planet. The larvae and eggs and small fries, everything. A genocide machine. French nuclear submarines in Canada. What? What kind of lunatic is this? And it's scary because I'll show you why. Last summer, Ottawa launched a study. A study to purchase patrol submarines. That's a study, is it? France is on the way to winning the contract. Well, France kind of got an inside door here in Canada, and it's called the French Connection. Have you ever read that article? The who's who of Canuck politics? Bear with me. Jean Chrétien used to be the Prime Minister of Canada. His daughter, France, is named France, is married to André Desmarais. André's father, Paul Desmarais, is the largest shareholder and director at Total Finol F, the largest corporation in France, which held tens of billions of dollars in contracts with the disposed regime of Saddam Hussein. So he had his nose everywhere. Mr. Martin was hired in 1960 to work for Paul Desmarais Sr., the French Connection, by Maurice Strong, who is a liberal backroom operator, tycoon, and part-time United Nations official who authored the Kyoto Accord, the predecessor to the Paris Accord. Mr. Desmarais made Mr. Martin president of the Canadian Steamship Lines, and in 1981 he made him spectacularly rich by selling the company to him, who went on to become the Prime Minister of Canada. But John Chrétien, Pierre Trudeau, many Prime Ministers of Canada have worked for that man. Many premiers of our provinces have worked for that same company, that same man. So who do you think is going to win the contract? Huh? Who? Who's controlling the federal government? Well, we just told you. Him. That's the company. And then he has all kinds of politicians, not just from Canada, but a lot, certainly from Canada, for decades. Ends up becoming the Prime Minister. Most of the last recent 4 decades, most of those Prime Ministers worked for him before they became Prime Minister of Canada. That's staggering. That's an incredible, staggering statement. You can read the whole thing. You can come back and read it. Well, you're not going to. It's not going to show up there, is it? A little too big for that screen. You can read between the lines. Yeah, there's some terrifying implications. Yeah. Blah 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 blah. Deterioration of the West Valley nuclear waste site. This was a former mixed oxide fuel fabrication facility in the United States. Has gone derelict and is still full of fuel and everything else. And you guessed it, surrounded by farms. Unbelievable. So we got a poll tonight. Should the people who okayed nuclear plants and farmland be arrested and jailed for life without parole? 33 votes and 100% yes. Wow, awesome. West Valley Nuclear Waste Site, one of the most intensely radioactive sites in the world, is located not too far from Buffalo. It's upstream and upwind of Buffalo and the rest of New York and the Seneca Nations of Indian Territories and Canada. Unbelievable. Just every time it rains, that place just hemorrhages radiation isotopes into the environment. Where highly radioactive nuclear power and weapons waste was reprocessed to extract plutonium and uranium. They closed it down because it was on an earthquake zone. It was an incredibly radioactive, still is, place. And without public pressure, the government will again choose the cheapest, not the safest cleanup plan. What the problem is, they're about to demolish one of the most contaminated buildings on the site. There's many buildings. And they'll do it the cheapest way. They'll do it with day labor from across the border. That's typically how they do it. Is they'll get day workers from different cities to come in. They'll fly them in. They'll work there for 10 hours. They get $100 danger pay, and they send them back home wherever they came from, and they die in increments over the next couple of years. Groups are calling for an enclosure during demolition, off-site real-time, publicly reported radiation monitoring to see if radioactivity is getting out. Good God, man, what do you think, we're in a democracy or something? Where 51% of the population can take away the rights of 49% of the population? Because that's what you're in. And they got control of the vote machines. Dangerous for thousands to millions of years. So what is? Well, so you got curium isotope, which is the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rod. Not iodine, not cesium. It's curium. And curium, you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. And plutonium was named after the devil because it's like the devil. Very deadly and very on the atomic scale. So you got all the daughters of plutonium or curium. You got all the daughters, and you've seen the different names there, 127, 128, blah, blah, blah. Well, they got different properties and different doses. And they're all going to be there in the same samples. Xenons, there's not just iodine or xenon 133. By the way, that's the model of the xenon. Sorry, that's the model of the xenon 133 plume covering the northern hemisphere. But then the model stopped. Do you really think the plume stopped? You think a week later it doesn't cover the southern hemisphere? Come on. Don't do me like that, bro. Isotopes of krypton. And oh yeah, name, Superman. You got isotopes of the Hulk and Spider-Man coming up in the near future, I'm sure. Isotopes of uranium, they're daughters, all the daughters of plutonium, they're all this stuff is nasty hot particles. Americium, all the daughters of cesium, americium, strontium. And then you can see here the decay chain for different isotopes. Curium-244 breaks down to plutonium-241. The Californium-215. Blah, 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 blah. You can just stop and look at it later if you need to. Burial of nuclear waste in one of the trenches in West Valley. It's a bad picture, but that tells you the story. It's very deep. That's a lot of waste, and they just know it's unlined trenches, right? No way to contain it, even with liners. Once you release it, you can't get near it again. Demolition removal of the old contaminated reprocessing buildings to still hold and shields tons of the most intensely radioactive waste and sludge from the bottom of the ponds, from the fuel rods melting down in the ponds. The main reason West Valley nuclear reprocessing, which is illegal now, right, in Canada, United States, mixed oxide fuel facilities, never restarted after ending in 1972 was the discovery of the high earthquake risk, which is amazing that they even stopped. More high and so-called low-level radioactive waste remains buried underground in unlined trenches, pits, and old tanks. It should be known that one of the biggest flaws with the West Valley nuclear site is that it escaped being bound to any major federal or environmental laws and regulations because it was built before that. EPA grandfathered in 67,000 chemicals when they were formed. No environmental or human impact studies done on whatsoever. Draining northern Erie County and the Great Lakes. You know the Great Lakes? The biggest aquifers in the northern hemisphere, for sure. Or like the third biggest in the world. That Great Lakes. Nuclear power, which they ultimately all come down to where we're onto. Nuclear power as well as nuclear weapons should be opposed. Indeed. An interview with environmentalist George Monbiot. And I'll never forget what he was saying after Fukushima. Apparently neither did they. He fails to mention his support for nuclear power, which is described in an article in The Guardian in 2011 headed, "Why Fukushima made me stop worrying and love nuclear power," in which he argued nuclear waste was safer than toothbrushes and coal. But there was the plume covering the whole planet, and George Monbiot was out there, "I love nuclear power, I Hitler. I love nuclear power, I Hitler." He claimed the effect of Fukushima was small for the people and the planet. Clearly untrue. Extreme increases in mortality caused by cardiac diseases alone. Because that's right, radiation doesn't just give you cancer, baby. No. You'll get smurfed up. The numbers of deaths was up 12.5% compared to the same month of the year before. You've seen an extra 12,695 people die of heart attacks in a single month compared to any other year. Is that a spike, I wonder? The cleanup by thousands of workers will continue for 30 years. You can't even decommission a normal nuclear power plant in 30 years, for goodness sakes. You got Donneray in the United Kingdom where George Monbiot is going to take at least 300 years. You think you're going to go into a nuclear reactor with multiple nuclear meltdowns and clean it up in 30 years? TEPCO Mitchell will run out of homeless in 5 years, for goodness sakes. And he did. 16,000 of them quit in a short period. Japan utility TEPCO expects first loss in 9 years. TEPCO still exists. They're not even a decommission authority on top of that. They're a utility. That's like you go out and buy a Maserati or a Ferrari or something like that. You get it home, a week later it breaks down on you. And he says, the giggling pin and the laughing shaft, and he sends you the part and tells you to stick it in there. Have a good day. Give us a call if you got any problems later on. Japan's utility TEPCO expects they're not capable of doing the job, is what I'm saying. The people who built the reactor are supposed to be the ones that go in there when it melts down, I would imagine. Here's another headline from TEPCO people probably forgot about. Fuel removal from Unit 4 of the Fukushima Daiichi. See the building to the right? They're claiming that's the building to the left. They're like, no, they're not doing that then. No, it gets worse. Watch this video here.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011, leading to the country's worst nuclear disaster.
Do I hear a boo? She's pretending she's at the top of the building to your left. Is that normal? So the fuel pools would be at the top of the buildings up here, and they don't have any repository in Japan or anywhere else. So those pools are stuffed with decades of reactor cores, both of them. At least 5 million pounds at the top of each building. Oh, and by the way, they've done the same thing for Reactor 3. They lied about it. They pretended that it was perfect. I know, I went there and checked it out. It's not true. It's not the same building. Look at it. That's Reactor 3. So, do you think Reactor 3 there is 190 feet tall? Anybody? The whole industry is insane, right? They're actually insane. It's time to go nuke on climate change. So they're really pumping nuclear compared to the last 10 years. We've never seen them pump it this hard. It's time to go nuke on climate change. By the way, experts have weighed in. It says nuclear energy is a waste of time. Clean energy. Nuclear power should not be considered an effective low-carbon energy source, okay? Climate change. Climate change. I'm going to hold my breath till I turn blue. Climate change. Fight against climate change. Nuclear power hinders the fight against climate change. So it doesn't fight climate change. It hinders the power in the fight against climate change. You get it? Climate. Save the planet. Please. Climate change. Ooh. Where are you going? We're doing so well. What do you had to touch that subject for? Climatologists. Climatologists. That was created. Climatologist degrees were created by the industry. And then the only solution was nuclear. James Hansen, he took the blue pill in a hurry. Climate stabilization. Climate 3, 4. And that's more Americans that have died from nuclear power, 3 or 4, is it? The Brookhaven National Laboratories and the Impact of the National Nuclear Laboratory continues to show almost no regard for its neighbors. And then all of its employees, they paid out millions of dollars to their employees in compensation for getting cancers. And also provided compensations to families of the workers who died from the cancers. They said, no, 3 or 4 Americans have died from nuclear power. In fact, if you go look at Los Alamos National Laboratory, I did, it was terrible. I had a headache for a week. At least 967 people began working at the lab since 1996, have applied individually but denied compensation for cancer. Almost 1,000 people applied for cancer disabilities from working at Los Alamos. Another 800 got approved, and countless others may be sick and haven't applied. So you had almost 1,000 with cancer couldn't get disabilities. You had 800 that ended up getting disabilities with cancer. Let me do the math on that. That's 1,800 people at Los Alamos National Laboratory that got cancers. So to come out and claim only 3 or 4 people died from nuclear power plant is an incredibly coward thing to do. The 3 Mile Island nuclear accident was the worst in American history, they say. Actually, it was Santa Susana Field Laboratory is what is now regarded as the worst nuclear accident in U.S. history. It was 50 years after it when they finally come out and said Santa Susana was equal to 460 3 Mile Islands melting down. And they hid that away since 1959, right? To fight climate change and carbon free and fighting climate change. Oh, Goldberg. Like, that's revolting. Obviously, he didn't write the article. That was written by the nuclear industry. He put the JG on it to get his paycheck. But he's obviously not capable of writing an articulated master propaganda piece like that. That's a hit piece from the World Nuclear Association, obviously. Tokyo Vice Governor suggests the Fukushima draft, all of Japan must face it. Sales of foreign Geiger counters were banned. Hey, 60 and older should be prepared to die at the nuclear power plant when she breaks down. 60 and older. Serious contempt for people that worked all their life. McGuinness moves towards including gas and nuclear. And then she's going to sell her house and move out of that neighborhood in a hurry, I bet you. Climate. Here's another fake video.
So this is really why we've been brought here. Where I'm standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
So that's BBC. Rupert Winfield Hayes claiming he's 100 feet above the wreckage over there. That's wreckage. You're not even going to find a light switch in that can work. That's the norm, right? That's nuclear. The world is still falling short of meeting its climate goals. That's a geothermal operation. That's crazy, eh? Costa Rica. They're taking energy from the earth and using the steam, you can see it, drive a generator. And you can do it on most of the planet. If the nuclears would stop stealing all the resources. Nuclear power awkward role in crucial COP25 climate talks. A nuclear reprocessing plant in Japan. Yeah, I keep forgetting about that one. Disgusting parasites. Source for climate news. Oh my God. An unusual scuffle broke out last summer about what role nuclear energy should play at next week's United Nations Climate Summit hosted by the United Kingdom. Now, we covered that story. That's Sellafield, surrounded, East Coast Sellafield, surrounded by farms, and there's 8 million liters of contaminated waste into the sea on a daily basis. 8 million liters of radioactive water that they're pouring over the melted mixed oxide fuel facility they have there. This is absurd amounts, which means the emissions into the air are going to be horrendous. Right, this confirmation is hemorrhaging into the air. And then to be surrounded by farmers' fields. So then that brings me back to the poll today. We got a poll. Should, that's not it. Should we have a referendum Should the people who okayed nuclear plants in farmlands be arrested and jailed for life without parole? Yeah. What do you think? I got a poll going there. You can vote. We got 36 votes. 97% people says, yep, put them in jail, no parole for life. The TIF began when organizers invited the International Atomic Energy Agency and other industry advocates to set up shop in the meeting's quieter blue zone instead of the public green zone where companies enjoyed higher visibilities. Well, that's because they got a nasty history in Britain, right? When Sellafield melted down, that facility there melted down in 1959, they went to the theaters and jacked people from the two back rows.
The police from the factory had turned up looking for volunteers, and they'd brought a bus, and they decided the best way to get the volunteers was to go to the cinema and volunteer the back two rows at the show to go into the factory to
drop dead and
as
die.
It turned out, to help push the fuel rods out of the reactor.
I think we should push the fuel rods out of my reactor. 280 counts per minute here? That can't be good. Every application on nuclear energy for the green zone at the upcoming COP26 conference has been rejected. Because what you've done to Sellafield. London-based lobbyists, the World Nuclear Association, nuclear lobbyists, London-based lobbyists called the World Nuclear Association, complained in a letter to COP President, "We are deeply concerned." He said, "Shut up." The Windscale fire, Britain's, which is Sellafield, they changed the name because they jacked people from theaters to go into the nuclear meltdown. Instead of nuclear scientists or nuclear academics, they're not going in. Or nuclear students. Chernobyl, which was covered up for decades, just like Chernobyl. Anti-nuclear nations from Austria to New Zealand. Anti-nuclear nations. I got to stick a label on everybody. From Austria to New Zealand, opposed attempts to label atomic technology with the same credentials as wind and solar power. Yeah, because there's nothing like it. They're like, you're what? You're confused? You're really that stupid? You're confused about this? At COP25, I was warned not to even attend, said Scumbag, the head director general of the IAEA. The UN body tasked. Actually, United Nations was created, was allegedly independent by unknown people. And then they started reporting to United Nations in 1959. They were created in 1957. This group declined to get involved in the industry spat with organizers this year, quietly announcing they set their tent in the blue zone. Now it is obvious we have a place. The arrogance, eh? The message to the public is that nuclear will be a very useful element in the equation, whether you like it or not. Whether you like it or not, you're going to end up eating that food grown around this facility, this ongoing nuclear meltdown with 8 million liters a day hemorrhaging into the ocean on top of that. Just like Fukushima, right? Emission-free electricity. Emission-free. There's this agenda since the Paris Accord a few years back. They all went to Paris and they had a great big orgy and the hell with the planet. And now to pull the plug on it, they're just a group of people that are insane and they're jeopardizing all the species. This is an absurd place. They're actually still making mixed oxide fuel here, despite the fact they have a mixed oxide fuel melted down and is still hemorrhaging into the environment. Like cathedrals of industrialization, many reactors were built half a century ago and are still reliably generating radioactive fallout, rain or shine. It's going to land in that food and murder everybody in increments, whoever eats it. That's genocide, to put the farms bad enough around a nuclear reactor, but around a meltdown to keep them operating. How do you get to be that evil? How do you become that monstrous? How do you get to be that demonic? How do you get to be that cold and spineless and soulless and heartless? How does that actually work? How do you get that evil? I wonder, how does that work? When the price of electricity spikes, even reactors that cost us billions of dollars each start looking attractive. That's what they're up to, right? Keep jacking the price up and then keep poisoning everything and everyone. Total indiscriminate. That's crimes against humanity. That's the definitions of crime against humanity too, right? Japan's prime minister, the nuclear push faces resistance ahead of the elections. With his future as a leader hangs in the balance if the vote is tight. This guy is a monster, for goodness sakes. He actually faked the visit to the Fukushima nuclear plant. He faked pictures. There's only one reason you're going to fake the pictures, because you're a coward. The reason why we feel so strongly about this is because we feel the danger of nuclear power plants. It hangs over our heads every day, and they got him labeled as an anti-nuclear activist instead of a human. Top Tokyo doctor dealing with nuclear workers demand the government step in at Fukushima for safety reasons. Some of them can't even read. Does that sound like nuclear academics to you? The mentally disabled are working at Fukushima. The homeless are treated like disposable people. Does that sound like a nuclear scientist to anybody? Actually, it does, doesn't it? Workers are tricked to being on the front line of the Fukushima plant. They kept me in a shed. Does that sound like nuclear engineers? Fukushima workers filmed at the plant that was asked to fake documents. Underage people are employed. Does that sound like MIT nuclear students to anybody that was working there? Oh, anti-nuclear activists. Scum, anti-nuclear activists. Energy prices came into sharp focus last month when Kishida beat a popular anti-nuclear candidate. Somebody who was going to do the moral and ethical thing. The mentally handicapped are working at the Fukushima plant, and they're given second-hand paper suits. The ultimate betrayal to give these incredibly brave people paper suits. Unskilled and destitute are the hiring targets for Fukushima cleanup. Not nuclear corporations, not nuclear alumni, not nuclear universities, but the unskilled and destitute. And you want to build more of this? Help Wanted ad seeks employees able to carry out a conversation. Well, that rules out nuclear scientists. The architect of Kishida's victory, party veteran, assumed a key party post and immediately pushed for the restart of 30 reactors in Japan, while promoting new, smaller reactors to replace the aging ones. Promoting reactors that don't even exist. There's this incredible drumbeat going on worldwide by this industry. They're in key positions to do it too, see? This desperation, it reeks of excrement and desperations. Japan must revert to nuclear power to meet its carbon neutrality pledge. Well, first off, is this carbon neutrality a growing food right alongside of nuclear waste? Thousands of one-ton bags of nuclear waste? For market.
There's about 60 million tons of contaminated soil that's being stored, planned to be stored, outside the Fukushima Daiichi perimeter fence. There's about 60 million tons of...
60 million tons. 60 million of those 1-ton bags. If you put a 1-ton bag in the back of a 1-ton pickup truck and you put each of those 1-ton pickup trucks bumper to bumper, that's 10 rows of traffic right around the entire planet. 10 rows. 10 rows of traffic of 1-ton trucks, great big 1-ton, 20-foot long trucks, bumper to bumper. You can't cross the road without walking on bumpers. 10 rows of it right around the entire planet is a tiny fraction of what they actually picked up. And so they just went ahead and grew food everywhere. They didn't care. We don't care. We're going to ship it to somebody else. We're going to ship it to Canada. We're going to ship it to the EU, Britain, ship it to Australia, ship it to America. And then there are people in the key positions in those countries like, yeah, and just said it's okay, ship it on in. Smurf few. Struggling to attract support for anti-nuclear. He restarted, nobody's gonna back the guy who says we can't keep doing this. So if you're a politician who's like, this is great, like, how much money you need? We'll get it for you. All of it. You like little boys? We get you little boys too, yeah? We Japan, we do stuff like that. A restart is critical for TEPCO, which needs money to fund the cleanup at its Fukushima plant. Yeah, how much do you need? How much are you going to save? Well, we're going to save $880 million per year in fuel. You owe $1 trillion for cleaning up if it's ever finished. You need $5 trillion to cover the victims. But you're happy you can save $880 million a year. Homeless people are being sold to companies put to work on Fukushima radiation. Slave labor are homeless. Victims of society don't even know what they're doing. How can we be proud of this? Homeless are taken to work at Fukushima ready to die. At the end of the month, they're left with no money, doing the most dangerous job in human history, and they even end up in debt to the employers after food and housing fees are deducted. And then they get dropped off. So you come back in 2 weeks, we'll have you check, and they die before that time. And the people that dropped them off knew it. And had the money there, could have paid them. That's the norm with nuclear. That's what nuclear does. It's murderous, cold-blooded killer on the planet. The big climate crisis we aren't talking about, nuclear winter. Nuclear winner. There is no winner in nuclear, Dana. America's aging arsenal of land-based nuclear missiles could far too easily lead to total climate catastrophe, I tell you what. By the way, the taser bomb, the most powerful nuclear weapon allegedly ever built, was 3,800, equal to 3,800 Nagasaki bombs going off at the one time. Literally the stupidest thing you can imagine, all that radiation. That's a nuclear war. That was a nuclear war. The sun didn't disappear. Nuclear winter never caught up. Nuclear winter is this stuff, where an invisible plume covers the planet and starts the slow kill of all the species. And as we start destroying the food chain in different increments in different places, everything starts collapsing. Emaciated birds, emaciated whales, emaciated seals, emaciated sea lions, emaciated bears, all the herring and anchovies and squid and start disappearing. Oh yeah, that's exactly what happened, isn't it? Since 2011. COP26 Climate Change Conference won't include nuclear. Pulsing energy every second. Oh, carbon, Dana. Carbon, Dana. Carbon. No! Carbon, Dana. Carbon. Carbon brings home the paycheck. Activists. Scum activists. We'll be pushing for drastic action to end the world's catastrophic reliance. The activists will be pushing to get rid of fuel, more nuclear, baby. Activists should all be having a big sign saying this is global warming. It's called Fukushima radioactive fallout. There ain't going to be a COPS 27 if he does that, I bet you. Climate emergency, which is Fukushima. Climate jeopardy. Oh, they're stretching for these words today. See that? They're all trying to outdo each other. There's climate emergency. Radioactive fallout. Pulsing energy heating the planet up every second. Forever, for the next millions of years. The prospect of a nuclear winter has hardly reached the stage of dim awareness. They can't see it, or smell it, or hear it, or taste it, or feel it, or touch it, or pick it up, or throw rocks at it. It just kills everything in increments over a short period of time. The threat of nuclear war is not receded. I guess you need that $1 trillion right now or something, is it? Radioactive plumes from Fukushima. Gas plumes don't do this. Oil plumes don't do that. Coal plumes don't go out there and pulse energy every second at the speed of light for millions of years. The bulletin of the scumbag scientists. These are all insiders. There is no bulletin of, there is no atomic scientists. This is the same people that would cut your throat to get your children's bag of candy on Halloween. Like, we'll actually do that, yeah. This is the Neptunium-239 dispersal covering the whole planet in radioactive fallout. Pulsing energy every second. A nuclear war will quickly bring cataclysmic climate change. So you think that the taser bomb, the Soviet USSR's 3,800 Hiroshima bombs going off at one time, if that didn't, that's a nuclear war, right? It's like Russia and China firing 1,900 Hiroshima 15 kiloton sized weapons at each other. A recent scientific paper in sync with countless studies concluded in the aftermath of a nuclear weapons blast in cities, smoke would block out the sunlight and below freezing temperatures would engulf the war. No. Radioactive fallout pulses energy every second for millions of years, heats the fucking planet up. Excuse the language. The Federation of American Scum. Hey, guess what, pinheads? Fukushima radioactive fallout is global warming. This is Neptunium-239 dispersals. That's global warming. To predict a nuclear winter would cause most humans and large animals to die from the nuclear famine in a mass extinction event, similar to the one that wiped out the dinosaur. Yeah, I wish. Actually, it's not as like that at all. This is how it played out. I went out and done research expeditions, year after year after year after Fukushima, done species counts. Okay, all right. Guess what I discovered? This is me. This was a 50-mile open ocean crossing that day. It got a lot worse. So I took these boats out, 3 of them out, and spent 4 to 5 months a year doing research expeditions along the entire coastline of North America, all the way to Alaska and back, over and over, and then year after year. And what did I discover on these expeditions?
Well, we got the big one up.
Yeah, I did so. Here we go. Doo, 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 doo. Now you can fill the beaches up with people. This is all, I went there, that's all me. Every one of them are me, actually. And these are before and after pictures. The pictures to your left, you'll never take them pictures again. It's a total extinction of all the species. I went there year after year, repeated the experiment, and the species never come back. Me and my trusty sidekick, Zoe. She died in my arms on a bird count expedition. She was 15 years old. And that was her spot to be. She went fairly quick, so bless her heart.
Takes off. Yeah.
But she's going to be the only color on that beach. This is low tide right by Alaska. Right by Alaska.
Yeah. Let's go take a pee before we go.
Because I'm moving down the coastline, right? But the species to your left are supposed to be to your right. They're the same place. These are before and after pictures. Authentic before and after pictures of the coastline of British Columbia in the same places. And it's a total extinction event. The whole coastline was wiped out all the way, which means Alaska is wiped out too, obviously. You'll never take the pictures to your left again. And that's because of radioactive fallout covers the coastline, the continents, and it also washes down to the coastline. It's a continuous plume. So every low tide, all the species were exposed at low tide, see? And so they only needed a few exposures to get pounded out of existence. And they got more than that. In fact, they disappeared off the entire coastline. And they used to cover every single rock on the whole coastline. And
hey Zoe,
this is just 3 or 4 miles from Alaska.
And a few waves right here.
That's typically the weather I was up against.
I don't want to stay around here very long.
4 to 5 months a year. This is what I was doing. This is typical because it's a tropical rainforest, right? That's typically what I was doing. And species are gone, all of them. All of the species are gone. So we see 6,000, now it's 7,000. That's last year's 2000 or January of this year. The new number for gray whales is 7,000. They have an unusual mortality event for gray whales, for humpback whales, for fin whales, and other whales. Whenever I got another show ready of marine die-off to go. I'm not sure if I'm doing it tomorrow night or not. But I got enough to do a full show, and if I keep gathering it up, it's going to be an extra long show if I don't do it soon, right? The big climate crisis we aren't talking about is nuclear winter coming. Climate movement, climate change, nuclear winter. Hey, nuclear winter. A nuclear power plant breaking down, resulting destructions will take half the planet with it. So what are you worried about? A nuclear war or a nuclear power plant breaking down? Huh? I can't hear you, terrorist. Climate. The atmospheric level of greenhouse gases have continued to increase. Greenhouse gases don't pulse energy every second. Nuclear does, though. These plumes, continuous non-stop plumes, pulsing energy every second. Pulsing energy every second. That's climate change. Look, covers the whole planet in radiation, pulsing energy every single second. Westinghouse micro-reactor feasibility option for Canada. Well, there is no micro-reactors. Shut up. And scumbag World Nuclear News don't even put their name on it. To say solar power needs wind, and wind power needs wind. Dana, you don't got wind and sunshine all the time, so shut up, Dana. Well, pumped hydro could deliver 100% renewables. They identified over 500,000 spots worldwide where you can naturally pump water up a hill. You don't have to modify it or nothing. So extra energy from geothermal or tidal or solar or wind or whatever blows your skirt up. You can pump the extra energy up the hill. And you can have stirred up pump for compressed air. They spent $54 million. And you know what? It worked. Excess energy to pump it down to a big tunnel. They got diagrams. You don't need espionage. They show you how to do it. It's obsolete up technology. Carbon footprint. The other flaw in nuclear energy is how dangerous it can be if there's an accident. If something happens to one of those plants, it could destroy an entire town. That's what he says, an entire town. And injure hundreds, Dana. Or it can cover the whole planet in radiation and wipe out all the insects and birds and mammals and animals. You disgusting sack of shit, you. You despicable piece of shit. A climate crisis. All right, this is World Nuclear News. And they don't put their name on the stories, eh? Cowards. They won't put their name on the stories. Yellow cake to make, and this is them again. This nuclear lobbyists, they're degenerate scum. There's no debates, there's just propaganda. Endless, constant, relentless propaganda. Yellow cake to make additional uranium purchases. London-based Yellow Cake has announced plans to buy a further £3 million, including £1 million of uranium-308 from Kazakhstan because they need a cash inflow, right? So they sell it to them for $46 a pound, and they buy £1 million. That's $46 million in the bank account today. $46 million is a lot of money to a mining company, trust me. It also intends to buy $2 million from CGN Global Uranium Limited. You see what's going on here? Artificially inflate the value now. Now the price has to go up, see? Artificially inflate the price. And they're going to dump everything else in the oceans and everywhere else. It intends to use, it's got $150 million to burn, and it's going to burn it all. It's kicked back to the industry. That's all they're doing, right? They're the middleman, right? They're going to buy it, hang on to it till you need it. But they got all that money, but they won't even give the children in orphanages around Chernobyl a color TV to watch, or even a TV or a radio to listen to. They'd rather leave the children with nothing, but they got lots of money for mining, lots of money for fuel plants, and lots of money for big nuclear power plants. We got it all, baby. We're not giving them TVs. That's what we do. We destroy life. We don't help the world. We destroy the world. Those children don't even have a TV in the orphanages in Belarus and Ukraine today, or last decade, or decade before, or decade. But the nuclear industry got tons of money. You ain't getting none. That material has been delivered to the Yellow Cakes account at Camco Port Hope Blind River facility in Canada. Scumbags. You scumbags. Beyond investors' interest in uranium. So this to help artificially inflate the prices. So in other words, lies, and oh my God, more lies. Successful close of this transaction enables us to acquire a further £3 million of uranium, which means they got £19 million, which doubled during the course of this year. So about £8 million of uranium. Some of it they got pretty cheap, right? $30 a pound. Now they're paying $46 a pound or something. And Kazakhstan plans to participate in Physical Uranium Fund, ANU Energy Limited, that they're going to put now on the financial center. So now they're going to take the money they got and buy uranium off another company that's struggling, another one of their death cults. It's like having a bunch of credit cards. Use one credit card to pay off the next credit card. Use that credit card now to pay off your next credit card. Use that credit card to pay off your next. That's all they're doing, right? But it artificially inflates uranium stocks up. Right now they're $47 a pound. You got to hit 60 for the mines to make a nickel, by the way. 2 million pounds of uranium-308 from them at a price of $46. It's a $1.27 difference. You're talking about £1 million. You're talking about $1.27 million for the £1 million, or double that up for 2 million, or triple it up for 3 million. How AI and robotics is used in nuclear research. You know, the kids in Fukushima schools are trying to invent a robot to fix Fukushima. These guys get all kinds of money thrown at them. They don't give a shit about them. we've heard these stories about robots so many times. Every robot, the little tiny stupid idiot robots they sent down there that can't do jack, they all died. But they got a lot of money doing it though. By opening 4 hot robotic facilities, the University of Bristol is leading a drive to make cutting-edge robots and drones and nuclear research testing places available to the public. They're gone into, oh shit, we got tons of money mode. Shocking how many people died in Fukushima. And they cremated the victims. Such a high rate of cancer being detected in Fukushima children. The University of Birmingham has obtained $4.2 million to establish the National Center for Nuclear Robotics. They're not going to give $100 for children like this to have a TV set that are in the orphanages. Imagine being in that orphanage all day today, and you don't even have a TV to look at, thanks to the nuclear industry. Too miserable to help them out. Why would you trust them to do anything else? We'll need a cooperation of 8 universities, 8 brainwash facilities from the United Kingdom. So it shows you how much control the nuclear industry got when they're taking 8 universities to address the challenges of properly cleaning up nuclear waste. Is this some kind of sick joke or something? Get 1,000 universities come up with solutions. Don't drag the pro-nuclear universities. That's a kickback to the pro-nuclear universities. West Coast bird die-off is the biggest ever recorded. The stomachs were completely empty. It was over 1 million birds starved to death at one time because of Fukushima radioactive fallout. Not only that, the 8 million birds' carcasses, or the 1 million bird carcasses, are all radioactive. Get your robots to go pick all those carcasses up, are you? Not only are reliable robotic systems necessary for future nuclear industry operations, well, 75 years later, and you're finally going to try. And you're not going to take the existing nuclear facilities that already have all the technology, know what they're doing. You're going to start from scratch, huh? You despicable excuse for a human, you. More workers sue U.S. nuclear lab over vaccines. I guess and a nuclear wasteland too. This is nuclear wasteland. This is Los Alamos National Laboratory. They have 1,700 people there with cancer. And they're gonna. This is the Emirates, where they cut carbon. Your fuel pools are going to be hemorrhaging radiation into the environment all day. I hope you got lots of farms around you to deal with it. You scumbags. Nuclear industry is just lunatic industry. Nobody's in charge, and they're all desperate to be the most evilest thing in human history. They're all competing with their parents and their grandparents and their great-great-grandparents and their great-great-great-great-great-grandparents. The secret death cult is being extremely polite. And Google unsubscribes people from my channel all the time. We got a total of... Sorry about that. We got a total of 42 votes. 95% says people who design nuclear plants to be surrounded by farms should be arrested and jailed for life without parole. Well. Couldn't be more proud if I wanted to be. Way to go, folks. Have we got time to... quickly, I'll say goodnight to as many people in the chat as I can. Chad, Amy, Howard, Warren, Ella, Ted, Ann Mansfield, Parole, Lori, and I serve one king, Jeffrey Brown. Well, lots of people. John Crankshaw. Shane Clark. Sacramento Lynn. Colette S. Katja and Jaffas, Jafas. Good night, everybody. $2.49 joint. It's Joe Moore. Hi, Joe. Joe was poisoned at Rocky Flat as a kid and suffers incredible debilitating illnesses and injuries. He actually made it on the TV one time about Rocky Flats. I'm trying to warn people. Kevin Blanche in the house earlier. And Tree Fruit. James Oldhand. Hi, James. Good night, everybody. Dana Nasana. True comes out to be hangings. Hope so. Get rid of the rope and get an ice pick. Chad. James Oldhand. I already said that. I always seem to miss one or two people each night because I read the comments later. Just in case Nuclear Industries in there and I can find them, right? Well, you know they're in there somewhere. William Joseph, Tinker. Good night, everybody. You're welcome, James. Robert, Kovac, everybody watching this later, tonight, tomorrow, the next day. Anna C3. There we go. I probably missed a couple of people. I always seem to for some. I don't know why though, because I always think I do a good job and that I got everybody, but I always seem to miss one or two people. I always try to say everybody's name clearly so they know that I appreciate everybody. Have a great night. See everybody tomorrow night. Tomorrow night's the last show. Probably going to do a die-off video. Because I got a big folder already. Insects are being wiped out. Mark Rogo. Good night, everyone. See everybody on the same time tomorrow night. Have a great night, great day tomorrow. Take care, folks.